morning, everybody. This is Eric Barger. I'm glad you joined me this morning for Take a Stand TV. I think we have some important stuff for you this morning. You know, most of us here in North America were in some way affected by the total eclipse that happened yesterday. It was only about a 70-mile wide band as far as I remember, but it started in Oregon, went all the way to South Carolina, and I know you've heard all about this on the news and so on. We here in, well, I'm south of Seattle, so we here in Western Washington were affected. And I was struck by the fact that we had a 94% eclipse, and yet we had bright sunshine. It was like somebody put a filter over the sun. And it got colder by about 10 degrees for those few minutes when the total eclipse was going on. My youngest granddaughter and I were experiencing it, and we were watching with either glasses, the special glasses, or with a homemade viewer that we made. But it was a very interesting, unique experience, and I couldn't help but think after I experienced that, I went into the backyard where I live, and I was looking at the trees. We live on a green belt, and it goes up a hill right behind our house. And I kept thinking, you know, the whole world is marveling about this. The world around us just oohing and ahhing. We were watching NASA TV, and of course they're very scientific and sadly very evolutionary and atheistic, I believe, at least most of them, most of the folks involved there. And yet we saw the wonder of what God has done in this little tiny minute part of his universe. And if he is indeed the creator, which I do believe he is, and I believe the Bible says that he is, I was struck by the fact that we are in awe of something going on in his creation. People were talking about it being a spiritual experience. And in the process of that, I couldn't help but think, and I was remorseful as I was talking to the Lord about this, about people being in awe of what's going on in his creation, but not being in awe of the one who created it all. So I hope you saw it like that. I hope that you were aware of how the world treats these kind of episodes and these things that happen. And this is of course one of the many signs, the great signs and wonders of what God does. And whether this has to do with something that has to do with end time events or not, I believe God is speaking in his creation, has been all through history, and he will continue. There are a lot of people out there that put all kinds of stock in yesterday being some sort of an event that played into Bible prophecy. There are some who have drawn conclusions and done mathematics and so on to get there. I'm not going to take up any of those causes myself. I'm going to stick with what the Scripture says. And I'm going to enjoy what God has done and be in awe of what he has done, but more so involved with what, in awe and being involved with what he has, what he is himself, who he is. I'm not expressing it very well, but it was a unique experience yesterday. Now, if you got the message I sent on Facebook this morning and also on Twitter, then you know that I'm going to do an update about what is happening with Melanie. And just to quell your fears, some of you who know Melanie and some of you who have seen us or have any kind of relationship with us as far as away from just watching on live stream here or maybe watching a DVD or whatever, she's okay. But we have had a real struggle over the past month. I did not mention it last week or the week before during the episodes of Take a Stand TV. But I will tell you what's happening today. She is on the mend, that's for sure. Many of you, including myself, have had back issues. I've learned some exercises that help me to keep my back from going out, but it's very painful. I can remember back in my early 20s laying in bed, and as I would turn over, and of course that was before I was saved, but as I would turn over and it would just be so painful I would tear up and cry. I watched the same thing with Melanie over the last month, and it's excruciating when you watch one of your loved ones go through that kind of pain. We were moving some planters around on our front porch. I didn't know until we moved back to Washington State that Mrs. Barger was also Mrs. Green Thumb. And when we came back from Texas, she couldn't garden because of the heat down there because, as many of you know, she has fibromyalgia and she also has chronic fatigue syndrome and has had it since 1989. And hey, we tried everything, really we have. The most important thing is we have trusted God and we have prayed and we have believed. And to this stage, she has found some relief. She's certainly more active now than she was back in the early 90s. She's my office manager. She's my assistant. I hate to even call her that because we are co-equals here in the ministry, even though I'm the mouthpiece. She would tell you that I'm the head and she's the neck, and wherever the neck points, of course, the head has to go. But we joke about it. But she is a great deal of this ministry. I would not be in the ministry today were it not be for my wife. I look back and I think that, of course, God could have planned and done different things and used different means, but I wouldn't be a Christian today were it not for my wife and her standing with me after she got saved and her praying for me. And her believing God that he would change me. And I was pretty unchangeable in those early days. I was a drug addict. I was spending $1,000 a week or more on my cocaine addiction each week. And I was living the lifestyle that I wanted to live. It was all about me and not about anybody else. But when she got saved, and I will put together a program here, or maybe two, probably just one, that really details our testimony and what happened and how God reached in and got me. First got her and then got me, but she stuck with me. That's the point. And so we've been together in ministry now. This is our 34th year full-time ministry, and I'm just so grateful that God has called us and used us the way he has. But about Melanie, we were moving some planters on our front porch, and one of them is extremely heavy. These are hanging planters, many of them, or some of them. And she has our front porch looking like an arboretum. It's beautiful. But I had this big planter in my hands. It's really the heaviest one of the bunch. I didn't know how heavy it was till I got it down off the hooks where it was, and she wanted it moved to the other side. So she was quickly trying to get around behind me so she could get a one-step little step stool and get up and get the rings on the planter up onto the hook that was already hanging, waiting for its arrival. And inadvertently, I knocked her with my right hand, knocked her off her arm. I knocked her off the one-step stool. And no, this is not wife abuse. We've been joking about this. It's not funny when you consider the pain she's been through. But she kind of went down the steps. She didn't fall, but she wrenched herself. Things got worse in the next couple of days, and we have a Labrador who has dysplasia, and some of you know, if you have dogs, you understand what that is. But she's having trouble with her back legs. She's only 10, but this is something that we go through with Labradors, and it's the first Lab we've ever had, but not the last. She is a wonderful dog, and that's another story too. But Melanie, in her kindness and her compassion, was trying to help Maggie come up some steps. And she made her back much worse about a week later. Just when she thought she was okay, she continued right on. Well, long story, it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And we have seen 3 doctors. We've seen chiropractic. Melanie now this last week has spent time in the hospital. We finally have some relief and some answers, and we're grateful to say that there's no bulging discs, there's no herniated disc. It's not in her spine, even though she has bad scoliosis from birth. The kid has problems, but she's not here to correct me on any of this, so she'll have to look at this later on and say, oh, what was he saying that for? She is actually asleep at this point in time in the morning. She's kind of a nocturnal person, night owl anyway, and the chronic fatigue gives you sleep issues, but she is sleeping, and I'm glad. I want her to sleep as much as she can. That is one of the prescriptions. That and walking are the 2 prescriptions we have for her. We will begin to see get some other treatment, chiropractic and so on this week. Been a strong believer in that. It's been very helpful to me personally. But she's finally mending. That's the point. And just getting out of bed brought her to tears a number of times in the last couple of weeks. I do appreciate that you would pray for her and pray for me. I've been nursemaid, needless to say. I've been doing nursemaiding, and I've been doing some of her office work, even though we are woefully behind on the stuff that she was in the middle of when all this happened. We're behind on some of our orders, and if you've ordered a product from us in the last couple of weeks, my apologies if you haven't gotten it yet. I am working on that. We'll get that out to you. To make things matters worse, my youngest daughter, who's now 43, her best friend passed away very suddenly in California. And so she has been away, visiting folks down there, visiting with the family that we know and we've known for many years. And she is not back yet. When she gets back, she'll be able to help me and help get our office back in order a little bit. My youngest granddaughter has been away, and she is now back, so I do have some help again, and that's good. And we have volunteers. And, of course, we've got our board members. I'm not called on them. One of them had a medical emergency recently, too. You know, I can look at all of these things that are going on right now, and I can tell you, Eric Barger must be teaching on spiritual warfare at this point in time. And I don't think it's any accident that things like this happen. Satan loves to attack. He does not get the victory, but there are skirmishes and there are battles and there are times of being down and then up and down and up. And that's the way it goes as long as we live in a fallen world. Now, all of you know what this is like. Some of you have had back problems. Some of you have had other much more traumatic problems than that. But when you're in the midst of the kind of pain I've seen Mrs. Barger in, you wonder if anything can be much worse. She has equated the kind of pain that she's experienced over and over that has worn her down to being very close to childbirth. Now, ladies, many of you know exactly what that means, and that's the kind of pain she's had. It's a large muscle group at the base of the spine that has been bound up. But I do appreciate that you would pray for her. You'd pray for me, pray for our ministry. And I'm going to do something this morning that I have not done in the time that we've been doing Take a Stand TV regularly each week with live streaming on Tuesdays. And we live stream about 10 a.m. Today it was about 10:20 when I got started. But 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning, and I want to be right on time if I can. Today was just impossible to do. And then tonight we'll start right at 7 p.m. and we'll repeat everything that I'm saying now and the program to follow, of course, because there is more to follow. We're not going to just talk about our health troubles and all of those kind of things or the eclipse. I think you've heard plenty about that. But we will do some teaching today, and it will be a repeat. And that's what I was getting at. I have not repeated any of the programming yet since we've been on doing the regular live streaming, but I'm going to repeat last week's program. I didn't feel like that I could prepare because it takes about 2 days now. In the beginning, it was more like 3 days, but now it's about 2 days to prepare all of the materials, to get everything lined up, to know exactly where all of the other things are going to go into the program as we do it. It takes about 2 days of our time to do this 40 or 50 minute, maybe at the most 1 hour live stream that we do on Tuesdays. So this is a big part of the ministry. And I believe in the end, it's going to pay great spiritual dividends as we reach people around the world and as word gets out about our ministry and about what we do and about just the kind of teaching I do, the way I do it. And I hope if you appreciate that you'll give us thumbs up and hearts and all those things on Facebook. But more than that, you'll tell your friends about it and you'll share the feed as well. I see a cursor back there bothering me in the background. There we go. So, oh yeah, I wanted to show you this too. Yeah, there's the latest picture that's been taken of Melanie and I. So now you know who she is, and I meant to show you that earlier, so you'd be able to kind of have who she is in mind. But she's been a prayer warrior for me, and just the love of my life, and I'm just grateful for the wife that God gave me, and for the ministry He called us in. Isn't it amazing that He would call us to ministry? Before either of us were saved, even though we would have both claimed to have been Christians, we had no idea who Jesus was. We wouldn't have known anything about personal salvation at all, nothing like that. Back in those days, I was a New Ager, and she was reading books on witchcraft, and we got saved. And she got saved, like I told you a minute ago, first. But I'm rambling on here, just telling you a little about us and trying to maybe give you a little peek into our lives. And I do hope you'll pray for us. And if you want to help defray some of the expenses that we are incurring here, I would certainly appreciate it. It takes about what 3 families in the United States need every month for us to be able to pay the bills for our ministry. And I know that sounds huge to some of us. It's not much when you think about how much is spent in ministry these days. But God has all the money. The cattle on 1,000 hills is what he owns, and I've trusted him all these years, and I'm going to continue to trust him. But when things like this come along and we don't have the kind of insurance where we can walk in the hospital and immediately everything is paid for, we have catastrophic insurance, and it's good, and it works very well. But we pay a lot of out-of-pocket expenses for doctor's visits and medication and those kind of things. And just to trust the Lord that he will take care of the rest. So if you want to give, you, of course, can do that by going to ericbarger.com, to our website, and then find the button that says support the ministry, and you'll be able to do that. If you want to become a monthly partner, we welcome that. We need more monthly partners. I said recently, if we had 50 more partners at $50 a month, that we would not have to talk about money or think about money at all if all those partners continue to contribute. So that would take care of the kind of the shortfall of me staying off the road and not going out to conferences and churches much, even though this fall I'll be doing a lot of that. I'll be going to conferences and churches quite a bit. But I do hope that you will support us, you will help us, and you will continue to stand with us as we continue to do what God's called us to do. So, with all of that said, about twice as long as I thought I would take, let's go right to the teaching on spiritual warfare, and this will be weapon number 1 of the 7 weapons that I believe will help us to win the spiritual battles. I believe this is the most poignant weapon of the bunch. And then, of course, next week we'll get into weapons number 2 and weapon number 3. So I'm going to try to hit all the buttons here at once. And I appreciate you being with me and praying for us. Thanks a lot. We love you, and we do appreciate you, and we're thankful and grateful that you're watching. God bless.
Welcome to another edition of Take a Stand TV with your host, Christian apologist, author, and speaker, Eric Barger.